Say what? We're already on page 3 or 4, last minute geometry? Oh, let's get busy. All right, this guy, we're doing more triangle rules. Now, if you're kind of rusty in your triangle rules, there's a video that talks about all kinds of different triangle rules, basic ding dong stuff. But if you hang with me, because this is last minute preparation, you can wait for that video another time when you actually have time to get ready for the next SAT. All right, let's get busy. Notice the image first, but I also noticed that the question is an easy level question. So I'm going to mark that sucker right there for you guys to understand this is easy. Now we see this right triangle. We know the world of right triangles deals with P-Thag. And this question is testing P-Thag. Answer choices look kind of scary, but we know it's question number 5, so it can't be hard. For the right triangle shown, A equals 4, label that sucker on your side, scratch piece of paper, and the other measurement is 5. Which expression represents the value of C? We know P-Thag is going to be A squared plus B squared equals C squared, which means that 4 squared plus 5 squared equals C squared. We can see the average student is going to go all the way to solve for C, but take a look at your answer choices. They want you to do that. Now, if I'll go the entire way. I got 16 plus 25. It's going to equal C squared. And what's 16 plus 25? They love using these numbers. 41 equals C squared. How do we figure out what C is? We're going to square root both sides. So C would equal radical 41. Then you look at your answer like, dang, I don't have my radical 41. You are moving too fast. Take a look at your answer choice and see what you're dealing with. Now, to solve for C, right? How do you get to that? The best answer. Here, the best answer is when, to solve for C, what did we do? We square rooted C squared and radical 40 and 41, right? Now, what if we did this? We square root C squared. We're going to get C, which means the other side, you got to square root also. So basically, D is your answer. Pretty slick question for an easy question, but most students answer it correctly. So it ain't too slick like I think it is, but I believe a lot of students would be angry if they miss it. All right, this question. We notice is a question what? 2-7 in the house is going to be dirty. If it's going to be dirty, we got to smack that question around. Let's do it. Then they give us an image and there are no answer choices. Ooh, I didn't really leave space to do this, but let's see what we can do. A right triangle has legs of 24 and 21. I'm going to draw it quickly. Right triangle, 24. Oops, let me label it better. Short leg 21 and the mid leg 24. That's what they mean by legs. Because what is the other quote unquote leg going to be? The hypotenuse. So when they say legs, they mean the side measurements, the short, the middle length measurements, not the hypotenuse. If they mention hypotenuse like they do here, they just tell us hypotenuse. Because some students think, oh, it's going to be a side measurement and a hypotenuse 21 and 24. No, it's the short and the middle leg measurements. Now, if the length of the triangle's hypotenuse in centimeters can be written as a formula of 3 rad d. Let me write that 3 rad d. They're telling us that this is equal, the hypotenuse is equal to 3 rad d. All right, a little basics. Where did that 3 live before? It lived inside the radical as 3 squared. So inside the radical, it's going to be actually 3 squared times d, which is radical what? 9d. All right, so 3 rad d is the same as 9d. We're clear? Here's where they take easy concepts and squish it into a hard question. That's what makes it hard. They take easy concepts and squish them in there. All right, now the rest of the question. If the length of the triangle's hypotenuse can be written in the form of 3 rad d, which is also rad 9d, where d is a what? Is a number. That word, oh no, scratch that. I thought it said constant. An integer, remember, an integer is a whole number. It can be positive or negative, including 0. Integers are whole numbers. So they're telling us d is going to be a whole number, not decimal, not a fraction, a whole number. And it can't be negative because we're dealing with geometry. We don't have negative length measurements. Then what is the value of d? All right, let's go into P-Thag. We got 21 squared, which is a squared, plus 24 squared is going to be equal to radical 9d. Calculator. So 21 squared, 21 times 21. I should have had this ready for you guys, but that's the way it goes. Plus 24 squared, 24 times 24 equals 576. If I add those two guys up together, 4 for 1 equals 1017, which is equal to rad 9d. All right, so what must d equal? What does that have to equal? Well, we can see that this 9 can certainly go into, remember, we're trying to get our C, we have to square root 1017. Remember, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So how do we figure out c? We have to square root that sucker. So the square root of 1017 is going to be equal to the square root of 9 times d. All right, that 9d means that 9 goes into 1017. So if we were to take 9 and divide it into 1017, what answer would that give us? It looks like it can't go together. Yeah, take a look. It goes into it 113 times. So if we wanted to get rid of the radical, let's just square both sides, get rid of the radical, right? So that's going to leave us with 1017 is equal to 9d. Divide both sides by 9. So d is going to equal 113. And that's it. That's the answer to your question, 113. Pretty slick question. If you feel uncomfortable with this, don't worry. With a little bit of practice after you take the test at the last minute, but after you take the test at the last minute, you're probably going to remember seeing a question similar to this in the hard section of the triangles. All right, question 20. We can consider this to be a hard question also. In triangle JKL, I'm going to draw, since they're showing me cosine, I'm definitely going right triangle. Why? SOHCAHTOA deals with right triangle rules. So angle JKL, I'll draw, let me go with J. I'm going to go backwards, JKL, right? JKL. Why did I not go counterclockwise? Because they tell me that the cosine of K is 24 over 51. So it's going to kind of break some rules, but that's okay. I'm going to keep it like this instead so you can understand it better. Oh, snap. Back that up. Oh, this is a good question. See, I didn't follow my rules. When you get into question 20, you got to be careful with the labeling of your sides. Notice what they did. Angle J is the right angle. All right, I have to put my J there. So where do I put my J and K? All right, J, I'm going to make this K. I'm going to make this L. Specifically, it told me angle J is a right angle. Ooh, if I continued with the previous labeling, I would have gotten busted on this question. All right, I got my JKL. J has to be the right angle. Now they're asking, what is the value of the cosine of L when you have the cosine of K be 24 over 51? So cosine goes with ka, adjacent over hypotenuse, and they said is 24 over 51. So let me go to the cosine of K, which means it's coming all the way from K. What is the adjacent to K? That's next door to K, not across, because across would be opposite. But the hypotenuse, we know it's the longest side, 51. So we got our match, 24 over 51, adjacent 24, and the hypotenuse is 51. From where? From the K angle. Now the next part is saying, what is the value of the cosine of L? Now from the L, from that angle, cosine also is kaka, adjacent over hypotenuse. And what would that equal? Well, I certainly know that the hypotenuse has to be 51, but what is going to be the adjacent right here? So what is that x going to be? Well, you could use your SOHCAHTOA. So SOHCAHTOA is going to use x squared or a squared plus 24 squared will equal 51 squared. I'm going longhand. There's a shorter way of doing this, but I don't want you guys to jump to conclusions. I want you to practice your basic fundamentals. And our 24 squared is going to equal 576. And then we have our x squared, so we have to solve for that sucker. So we're going to subtract both sides by 576. Subtract 576, 576. And therefore, we'll have x squared is equal to 2601 minus 576, which equals 2025. What is the square root of 2025? Bang, it's going to equal 45. So x equals 45. So our answer to this question is not going to be 45. Be careful. You go and you're like, yes, I got it. X equals 45. What was the question? Go back to the question and verify that you answered the question. What is the cosine of L? Well, we already got that 51 in the hypotenuse, but what is the adjacent? It is 45. So the answer to this question is 45 over 51. Or if you use your calculator, you can also get a decimal answer, which will also be correct. It'll be 0.8823, and it goes just as long as you fill up your boxes. So 45 over 51 is your answer, or 0.88 whatever 235 could be your answer. Or even if you reduced 45 over 51, what can we reduce it by? We could use 3, right? 3 goes into 45. 15 times, and 3 goes into 51. Looks like it's going to be 17 times. So your answer is also 1517. And by the way, you know what they're also showing you here? A special triple triangle. All right, guys, let's go to the next one. Question number 17. Now, this is a borderline medium hard question. Let's be careful. When we know we're there, we got to be careful with side measurements. Triangle FGH is similar. Now they're combining several rules of SOHCAHTOA and similar triangles, similar to JKL, where F corresponds to J and angles G and K are right angles. All right, let's draw carefully. I'm going to draw my right triangles. Since they are similar, I'll draw one a little bit bigger than the other. All right, now I'm going to go labels. They said that G is a right angle, so I'm going to put my G right there. And not to make a mistake, my right angle is also K, so I'm putting my K here. So the first one is FGH, so I'll just put F there and H. It doesn't matter if it's reversed. The top is H, the bottom is F. It doesn't matter because as long as G is the right angle, we're good. And the other one is JK. I'll put J here. That matches with F. JKL goes with H. Hoo. All right, let's do it. If sine F, what is sine SOHCAHTOA opposite over hypotenuse is 308 for the opposite, and the hypotenuse is 317. Let me stick there, 317. And my opposite of what? Of F, so the opposite of that angle is going to be 308. I'm set. Now they're asking, what is the value of the sine of J? What is sine SOHCAHTOA opposite over hypotenuse? So what would be the value of the sine of J? Wait a minute. If the sine of F is this guy right there, the sine of J would have to pretty much be the same, right? It's got to be the same. It's going to be 308 over 317. And B is your answer. What? That's all they had to do? Yeah. Let me verify because it's question number 17. Oh, 17, borderline medium hard. Sine of F. Yep, certainly is. So it's from this corner. And the other one is the sine of J. So it is from this corner. Well, if they are similar triangles, they share the same proportional measurements. So we could actually say that that could be a 317 and that could be a 308 as well. So the opposite from J is 308 and the hypotenuse is going to be 317. Now we don't have the actual measurements for JL and KL, but we could say it could be double, right? It could be 6, 16. Scratch that out. And this guy could be what? 634. And still, if you did that, right? If you put 616 over here over 634, it's still going to reduce to what? 308, 317. So still B is your best answer. All right, next question. Question number 27. Oh, it is deep and is deep. And we're not afraid. No images given to us. All right, give it to me, yo. The perimeter of an equilateral triangle. All right, equilateral triangle. What is that? All sides are equal. Let me draw that sucker right there. I'm going to try and draw it as equal as possible. Equilateral triangle, again, all sides are equal. All sides are equal. That means all angles will also be equal. By the way, how many degrees do we have in a triangle? 180 degrees. If I divided that by 3, then each angle is going to be 60, 60, and 60. Got it? When I see equilateral triangle, that's the information that goes right into my head. And I need to know that information because if I don't, I'm going to get burnt like toast on this question. All right, let me erase some of this so it's not as messy. Bang, 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 bang. Bang. All right. They said the perimeter of this is 624. So let me just write the perimeter of this. I'm going to put P equals 624. What do I know? All sides equal 624. But what's going to be each side measurement? I divide that by 3. So 3 goes into 6 one time. 3 goes into 2 0 times, but it goes into 24 8 times. So that's a side 108. This is going to be 108, and this will be 108. Yeah, 3 times 8 is 24. 3 times, wait, did I do that right? 3. Wait, 6 divided by 3. Oh, what a ding dong, man. Hold on, my bad. 208, 208, 208. Woo, very easy to make careless errors. All right, now that I've got this, what's my next step? Keep on reading carefully. The height of this triangle is, here we go, the height of this triangle is k rad 3 centimeters. So I'm going to draw a line from the vertex all the way down to the base. When you do that, you are splitting the vertex into two equal parts, and downstairs you're creating two 90-degree angles. So again, you're splitting upstairs in two equal parts, which means that that's now would be 30, this would be 30, you still have your 60, and you still have your 60. All right, this is a deep question, and what do I see they're testing? The 30, 60, 90 rule. Now at the beginning of the test, you do have this 30, 60, 90 rule, and it states the following. When you have a right angle, a right triangle, and you have 30 and 60, the short leg is always x. The hypotenuse is always going to be 2x. And the height will be x radical. Now, what makes our radical going to be 3? That you have 3 different angle measurements, which means you have 3 different length measurements. All right, this relates to the triangle video that I break down triangle rules. Here, I'm briefly giving it to you because you're studying at the last minute. So if you're studying at the last minute with a couple days left, or maybe 5 days, or even 24 hours, and you don't get this question, then at least, when you see it in a test, you're just going to write in an answer and get out of Dodge. You don't need to hang around with this question. This is meant for those students who really got into this and studied. But maybe you'll get it. Maybe you'll get it. So I'll continue. So the rule for 30, 60, 90 is going to be x, hypotenuse is 2x, and the height will be x radical 3. And why radical 3? Because you have 3 different angle measurements, which means you have 3 different length measurements. So always use 3 for the 30, 60, 90. And then they say where k is a number, a constant, just call it a number. Don't worry about the word constant. But they want to know, what is the value of k? So they're asking, what is this value right in there? That x, they're calling it k. Actually, let me turn it into a k. K. No, I'm going to leave it like that. Forget that noise. They're trying to trick you with the letter k. It's really x. What is the value of k? All right, now we go to our drawn image right there. I drew half the length of the base, and the height is this guy right there. So if the side measurement, right, what do we say the side measurement was? We said the side measurement is 208. So that means the base has to be half of the side measurement of the equilateral triangle, which that means this is going to be 104. You with me so far? So now, what is the height going to be? The height has to be x radical 3. So that's going to be 104 radical 3. So what is k going to equal outside there? It's going to equal 104, and that's the answer to your question. That's pretty much it. So again, this deals with basic ding-dong rules of triangles. Once I drew that line right there that split the triangle directly in half, I got 2 equal angles. So it used to be 60, is now 30. I still have my 60 and I have my 90, 30, 60, 90, which means that my length here is 208. This turns into 104, and this side will turn into 104, and we still have our 28 over there. So therefore, I have x, 2x, and this height is going to be x, which is 104, radical what? Radical 3, because we have 3 different side measurements and 3 different angle measurements, and that's it. 104 is your answer. Question number 25. What's up, yo? This is also known as a hard question. We're in the 20s, so we have to be careful. An isosceles right triangle has a hypotenuse of length 58 inches. Oh, now they're playing games with us. Here, I'm going to draw it. Oops. Let me do a better isosceles triangle. Isosceles right triangle. Isosceles, 2 equal sides, right triangle. So that means I'm going to have a right angle. But my 2 side measurements are going to be equal to each other. However, I do have that right angle right there. Then I'll have a hypotenuse. That is an isosceles right triangle. And it has an hypotenuse of 58 inches. Oh, this is a good question. What is the perimeter in inches of this triangle? Pause. What do we know about this isosceles right triangle? Isosceles right triangle means that the other 2 measures, since I have 2 equal side measurements, that means I'm going to have 2 equal angle measurements here. If I have 180 degrees in any triangle, but I do have that right angle right there, if I subtract the 90, what do I have left over? I'm going to have 90 degrees left over. That must be split equally into these 2 angles. So that means this is going to be 45, and this sucker is going to be 45. That is one basic information that I have so far with this 45, 45, 90. Oh, this is a 45, 45, 90 rule triangle. Remember, the previous question was 30, 60, 90. Now we're doing 45, 45, 90. At the beginning of the test, in the, what do you call it, the formula guide, they're going to show you That would be x, this would be x, and then this would have to be x radical what? Not 3. That's 30, 60, 90. Three different side measurements, three different angle measurements. Here we have two equal side measurements, which means we have two equal angle measurements, which means that that would be x radical 2. All right, so what's going to be the perimeter of this sucker? Wait, Mr. Alberto, the 58 does not have a radical 2 next to it. All right, pause for a second. We're not going to answer the question. I'm going to give you a drill. If they did show us radical 2 here, then what would be the other side measurements? The other side measurements would be 58 and 58, right? X radical 2. If they're showing us 58 radical 2, x equals 58, then the other two side measurements would be 58 and 58. But in this question, they didn't show us 58 radical 2. They just showed us a plain old 58, right? No radical 2, just 58, which means, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to show you something that's going to help you big time. Where is radical 2? Radical 2 is cheating on 58. Radical 2 is supposed to be next to 58, but it's not there. It's actually cheating on 58. So I'm going to put radical 2 here. Who's it cheating with? It's cheating with the two other sides. So radical 2, we're supposed to be at the hypotenuse, 58 radical 2. Radical 2 is cheating with the other two side measurements. So what can the other two side measurements be? Well, just take your 58 divided by 2. What is that going to equal? Right? So 2 goes to 5. 2 times and then into 18, 29. So it's 29 rad 2. And this guy's going to be also 29 rad 2. Why? The two equal sides. Now you figured out your side measurements. Since radical 2s are cheating on the other side, it's making 58 feel half of itself. So that's why the other two side measurements will have 29 at the beginning. If we add all three sides, 58 plus 29 rad 2 plus 29 rad 2, if we add these side measurements to each other, our answer is going to be C as in kitty cat. Very slick, dirty question. By the way, ACT loves testing these type of questions in their exam. So when you're working on these pages or any of the questions that you worked on before in the previous videos, you're preparing not only for the SAT, but also for the ACT. But by the way, the ACT will not give you a formula guide. Isn't that messed up? All right, circle rules. Let's go into this, guys. This is question number 19. You noticing a pattern with these questions? They like them to be upper level questions. So be prepared. This would be considered a hard question. Let's see what we got here. A circle A has a radius, right? Circle A, I'll draw a circle. Circle A has a radius of 3 pi. All right, let me draw that sucker. Whoop, 3 pi. All right, cool. And then circle B has a radius of 129. Oh, wait, back that up. I wrote pi. Man, dirty, man. That N, that's supposed to be N. They got that N looking like a pi. Wow, slick and dirty. All right, so 3, it equals 3N. That is the radius of this guy. Why can't they use a capital N, yo? Mean. Now, circle B has a radius of 129N. Oh, man, I didn't even think of that. People could think it's an actual pi. So 129N. All right, cool. I just drew it. Where N is a positive what? Is a positive number. Constant. Whenever you see the word constant, just put number. All right, now they're saying the area of circle B is how many times the area of circle A? This is a hard question because they're using that N. Let's go into the area of a circle. The formula for the area of a circle is simply pi r squared. Now, in this question, you're going to be dealing, if you're going to stick your pi as 3n and do pi 3n squared, you're going to get lost and confused. Let's just say for right now, n equals 1. So if n equals 1, that means we have a radius of 3. On the other side, if n equals 1, that means we have a radius of 129. All right, I think you killed the question now. So let's just solve. What is pi 3 squared? That's going to be 9 pi. And then the other one, what is pi 129 squared? So 129 times 129 equals 16,641 pi. And the question is specifically asking what? The area of circle B is how many times the area of circle A. So just take 16,641 and divide it by 9. And what answer do you get? Dang, that's your answer, 1849. And that's all they're asking. What makes this a hard question? That they're using the letter N and they're trying to confuse you. They want you to do this. Let me figure out the first one. It's going to be pi times 3n squared. Yeah, eventually you can get to the answer by doing that, but it's going to be confusing if you do so. Just make n equal 1, and then you just have a radius of 3, and the other one's 129, and it's out. What the answer choices is showing you, right? What will most students do? They'll take 129 and divide it by 3, and they'll get an answer like 43. This is bait. See how nasty these guys are? So once you know that these guys are being troublesome with you, then you can eliminate bad answers. But anyhow, I digress. Let's go into the last question of this guy. Question 20, also considered a hard question. Point O is the center of a circle. No image, no answer choices. So what does that mean? I got to be selextra careful. Let's do point O of the center of a circle. Point O. All right, I'm going to put my O right there. Chilly chill. Now the rest of it. The measure of arc RS on this circle is 100 degrees. Here, they're holding back on information. Holding back. If it was an easier medium level question to tell us, they will tell us, oh, there is a point R and a point S on the circle. Now, whenever they do this, I like to do my 2 points at the 1 o'clock position. Imagine like this is a analog clock, 1 o'clock position and the 3 o'clock position. So at the 1 o'clock position, I'll put my R, and I'll put at the 3 o'clock position my S. The measure of arc RS on the circle is 100 degrees. So if I connect R and S, they're telling me that that has a measure of 100 degrees. Now, it's not inches or centimeters. They're talking about the degree measurement of angle RS, which means that from the center out to R and from the center out to S, right? That's considered radius, that's considered radius. But what would this angle measurement be inside of here? That's pretty much what this question is asking. What is the measure in degrees of angle ROS? Angle R, O, and S would be this guy right here. It'd be the same answer, 100 degrees. That's the answer to this stupid question. Most students answered incorrectly because they forgot just the basic rules of stupid circle and angle rules. So imagine like if this was the sun, right? Shining brightly, and it radiates in equal lengths, both sides, its rays, the sun rays. If it radiates all the way out to here, right, all the way out to here as 100 degrees, well, what did it start radiating as, when it started shining? It started radiating as what? At the same degree measurement, 100 degrees. And that is the business of this question. Again, if you have any questions related to this, all you have to do is contact me. You could text me, or you could holla out at me at this number down here, 786-877-7231. Don't forget, like, comment, share, subscribe. Subscribe so you get access to additional videos that I will be posting shortly. And that's it. Peace out.